Every 40 seconds around the world, somebody takes their own life. 1 in 4 adults will have a mental health challenge this year. And our next guest knows that these numbers aren't just stats, they are lived reality. Oly, welcome to the show, mate. How you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So your particular journey is one of a lived experience, which has forced you into this career now, which is about speaking about mental health. And I love, I'm sure we're going to get into it a little bit later, I love the almost strong-arming corporate social responsibility onto companies. I think it's fantastic, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later. With the whole aid of it being able to force conversations in schools. Oly, are you able to paint me a picture of just quite how bad the mental health crisis is in the UK and across the world right now?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can try. It's something I've been sort of trying to unearth for a long time now. It's becoming increasingly more difficult. So many organisations and schools are pretty much in a crisis, really, and I think the demand to try and get support through the NHS as well is just, it's ridiculous. So it's becoming impossible. And I think what's come from that is a lot more groups that can help people, which maybe people are not really aware of. And when I was struggling myself, particularly through those dark periods, I was on the wait list for the NHS on 3 occasions. One occasion was for 18 months, one over 2 years, and one 2 years bang on. And there was never a sort of an alternative. It was just like you'll get the help when the time's right. And I'm quite a literal thinker, so I was always waiting. Whereas what we've seen on the back of it, yes, we're in a crisis, but there's so many more support groups out there where you can get help and you can meet other people just like you. And I think that lived experience element is something that I'm so passionate about, meeting other people that are on a similar journey to you, rather than sitting there at home waiting that you might get that call to get that support that might not even be right for you. Some people just need conversation and to talk about these things openly and find a place where they sort of feel like they belong.
How do we paint those stats that 720,000 people worldwide a year take their own life, which is a staggering number? How do we make those stats real for a room of people or for our audience watching at home?
Yeah, it's tough. And this is a lot of the stuff I do on the building sites. We ask the lads in the whoever's listening. Sometimes you might have 300 lads just stood around you, and it's very different to the other work that I do in corporate or in schools, where you're on a crane and you're looking down and you've got like 300 guys underneath you, and you ask them to put their hand up if they've got a friend in the industry who's taken their own life, or they know anyone who's taken their own life, and pretty much like 70-80% of them have got their hands up, and it's just frightening. It's honestly it's such a tough place we're in at the minute.
You mentioned just before we went live there that you're doing talks on building sites, and just mentioned it there. That feels like progress, doesn't it? It feels like building sites being a traditionally very alpha male sort of dominated kind of environment. You think that's the places that you would get the most pushback for having these talks. But I think as you were talking then, and you said, put your hand up if you've had someone that's taken their own life. I think that's such an icebreaker way to do it. What's the response like that you get on sites?
It's very interesting, because you sort of get there and everyone's like, "Oh, I don't want to be here. Get me. I'm not doing this. I'm not listening." But honestly, give them 10 minutes of like listening to a bit of your own story. So many of those lads can relate, can connect. There's so many guys and girls on site who are ADHD like I am, who can maybe relate to some of the mental health struggles. And, the work started, more involved with sort of corporate social responsibility sort of projects. But I've been able to partner now with a really cool charity that I work with, and I work on behalf of them, and we travel around in a van and we go onto these sites. And what's incredible about it, and what's so different about any of the other work I do, like I can go into these schools, but what I can't do is say, if a kid comes up to me, I can't say I can get you help tomorrow. Whereas with these guys, we can get them therapy literally next week. It's absolutely unbelievable. So it's what I love about it is it's the most impacted industry for mental health, for suicide, the highest rates in any industry. and we can sort of play a bit of a part in that and actually get these guys some support and get them talking, whether it is therapy or life coaching, or some of them have got nowhere to live, and we can put them in accommodation, sheltered accommodation, and get them, help them pay towards rent and everything. It's unbelievable. So
why do you think construction's the industry with the biggest issues?
I think it's because men aren't talking. They're just, it's a predominantly male industry, and guys aren't talking. But there's also the banter side of it as well that sometimes goes a little bit too far. I met a guy on site a couple of months ago, and he was, he'd had a kid recently. He was, married this lady, and she ended up sort of running off with a woman. And obviously, as you can imagine, the lads on site found out, and he became like the joke of the whole site. And he was sort of feeding into it a little bit, like even, my missus has run off with a woman, I'm that bad and so on. But actually deep down, when he came and spoke to me, it was like, it's killing me. Like, can't see my kid. And it's just, lads just don't talk. And you can see when they're there, some of them, like when we deliver this stuff, we're always in twos, because there's always someone who'll just walk off or like run off, or, and it's so tough. There's also a massive issue with in the industry with men breaking up with their partners, and then their partners weaponizing their kids against them. So everywhere we go, we're seeing that. And that is breaking these men down, and probably one of the big reasons why so many men are taking their lives, because they can't have access to their kids. They can't see their kids.
That is a massive thing for men when relationships break down. I saw something last week, which is one of the states in America has made it the default is shared custody when a marriage breaks down. Where it wasn't the default, it was always that the children would live with a woman, and shared custody and no child support is the new default, and it's just dropped the divorce rate by 70-80%. I can't remember the exact figure, but I remember reading it and going, that's insane. And I wonder how much of that is because of weaponizing child support and access to children, which obviously has an enormous impact. In fact, I would say the lads that I speak to, probably the number one thing that people will talk about is that not seeing my kids is probably the biggest one. Yeah,
100%. And that's the one that clearly upsets him the most. And there was a guy on site about a month or so ago, and he was talking to us about how he couldn't afford to pay any more of the law bill, everything that was coming through. I think he'd said he spent £10,000, but then he didn't know the charity exists that we work with, and they're called the Lighthouse. They're incredible, and he didn't know anything about them, and we can help him with sort of that side of things too. It's not like we can pay for all of his legal bills, but we can certainly help him get the right people behind him to support him, and so many other people like that. So
I wonder if it's cultural with building sites as well, being like it's clearly working class lads.
Yeah.
And is there substance abuse and alcohol and things like that are maybe feeding into the mental health side of things?
Massive. And that's one of the other reasons I got involved in it, to be honest with you, because there's a huge problem with cocaine, especially lads who are travelling and away from their family over the week. They're going out. Some of the lads will have a few beers, and then they'll go back to the hotel room like on their own and be taking cocaine all night. They just get caught up in it. And that I had like personal experience, not with myself, but with someone quite close to me who I've supported through that journey. And they were one of the reasons why I ended up working with the charity as well, because they also helped my friend. And I would never have known that person was going through that. I would have never had any idea. And then the more I dug into it, the more I realised how big a issue it actually is.
It's extremely common.
Yeah.
And it's extremely common at football as well, amongst probably the same people, honestly, construction lads that are also going to the football.
Yeah.
Cocaine at football and cocaine on construction
sites.
Really?
Wow.
It's an epidemic. Yeah, it's an absolute epidemic. And I don't understand it.
No.
I don't understand the correlation between the two, to be honest.
Makes sense though, because like a lot of the lads I used to go to football with, they're also working on building sites, but also in that same problem on a weekend, not coming in. Relationships are breaking down, friendships are breaking down, and it's all tied in, isn't it?
Yeah, there was a lad I knew a while ago. I won't give his name out. He wasn't really a friend of mine. He was sort of on the periphery of our sort of friendship group. He spent 30 grand on cocaine in 1 year.
Wow.
And he had a normal job. It wasn't like he was a,
could afford it.
Stock exchange guy or something. No, I'm pretty sure he did glazing or something. Like he was a normal job. He was just in debt with it because he just got stuck into it.
Same with gambling, huge, especially in construction as well. And that's something I can really resonate with because my previous experience before this was working in the gambling industry, and it's not a good idea to work in the gambling industry when you've got OCD and ADHD, and it only takes one little thing. And thankfully for me, I was able to control it, but it was more the impact it was having on my mental health. I was always looking for like this dopamine hit, this quick fix. And, sometimes now I'll go home and I'll have had a really good day. Then I'll put, I wonder what race is on next. And I'll stick the racing on, you can get caught up in it. And I can only lose like probably £30 a week now. But, there was problems for me years ago when I was working in the industry, especially when I'll go into it as well a bit, when I was moved over to Gibraltar to run away from a lot of my problems, where I was, I put 500 quid on a horse because I was working with the top clients for a big bookmakers, and you'd get them ringing up, putting like 50, 60 grand, and you'd think, oh, it's going to win that. I wouldn't put 50, 60 grand on something if it's not going to win. And obviously it doesn't win. And 50, 60 grand to them is probably enough, it's probably like the equivalent of me losing 20 quid because they've got that much money, but it's frightening.
It's a terrifying amount of money.
It is, yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, I was when I worked in that industry, I was taking bets for $500,000.
On what?
The tennis match. Yeah. I took a bet for $500,000 on the tennis match, and I also...
Is there not an "Are you sure, mate"?
Well, it was I think it was because Nadal was playing. I mean, it did actually win, but the worst one was when I was in there, and obviously I can't go into too much detail, but some clients were £30,000 a dog race, and there would be, there's a dog. They probably like me, they couldn't wait for half an hour for the next horse race, and the dog race is every like 8 minutes. So it was honestly, it's frightening. And then obviously it's different in this industry. You're not gonna be spending that much money, but you can imagine how easy it can be to just lose all that. Some people lose it. That's the same day they get paid.
You just touched on there that you got OCD. This is kind of the genesis of all of this when you was a kid, right? Give me the backstory for that.
Yeah, so I remember the very first time that I knew I was a little bit different. I was 7 years old. We were in Menorca. We'd been out for a meal with my family, and I was walking down this street, and I touched this lamppost in my right hand, carried on walking, and after about 100 metres, I just had this like really weird feeling that if I didn't go back and touch it, I thought my whole family were going to die. So I ran back and touched it, and honestly believed I'd saved everyone's life. My dad was chasing me, and I can remember it really clearly. But I didn't realise that like back then that was going to be the start of something that was like going to make my childhood quite difficult, because it started to creep into like every day, like walking to school, I'd step on a grate, have to go back and step on it. If I didn't, something bad's going to happen to my family. And then on an evening, it's predominantly common around sort of routine periods, OCD. So I'd started to do these checks in my bedroom before I went to bed, and it was like, I had a wardrobes, like this curtain and this little box. I think I'd seen a film on monsters or something. I was like 7 years old. I was scared that it could be in my cupboard, and I started to do these checks. And it was just one lap originally in my room, just getting into bed. But then I started to make these mistakes every time I was doing it. And every time I made a mistake, it basically built like a further ritual into the following night's routine. And then within the space of 2 months, I was doing it 48 times. And it was taking me nearly 2 minutes sometimes for each thorough check of the room. So it was taking me an hour and a half to get into bed when I was like 7, 8 years old. And it was all revolved around that same way of thinking. Something bad's going to happen if I don't get this right, and I have to do it.
So most people think OCD is people who like all of their cans the same way in a fridge.
It's massively,
they're a little bit tidy, but that isn't it, is it?
No. So there's a huge media misconception of what OCD is. OCD actually ranks in the top 10 most debilitating diseases in the world in way of loss of life, loss of earnings.
Well, if at 7 years of age, it's taking you an hour and a half to get in bed.
Yeah, and that isn't even the darker side came a little bit later on, if I'm totally honest, but that was just, I was almost able to just deal with it because I was like, I don't know how I did it. I was able to mask it. My dad, bless him.
At 7?
Yeah, I was able to sort of mask it. I'd go downstairs in the morning. My dad was in the bedroom underneath me. And my dad still jokes about it to this day. He put like laminate flooring in the bedroom, and he used to say it was like sleeping under Sheffield Greyhound tracks. So I was going around my room at 100 miles an hour. And he'd be banging on the ceiling after 45 minutes, like, what on earth are you doing? But I could never tell him. like I couldn't explain it because of the fear that was attached to the thought. So I always used to say, I'm just doing some exercises or I'm just walking. And he was like, why? And I could never really explain it. I'd lock my door and I'd go in my room and I'd do it, and it carried on all the way up until I was probably 10.
Why 48 times?
That's the number I remember. It was always in multiples of 2. Had to be in multiples of 2. And 48 was the point where I thought I can't do this anymore.
So for all the people that like to have their TV volume or their car volume either on an even number or on a 5, that's not OCD. I don't know what that is, but like, because that's really common, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's common. So the issue that we have, us sufferers with OCD, is because of that media misconception. It's really difficult for anyone to come forwards and actually speak about the struggles they face, because they think it's, when they get that diagnosis, everyone's like, you think it's like, is it a joke? Like, is it just...
Yeah, everyone's like, oh,
I've got a bit of OCD. And I actually grew up from sort of 12, 13 years old, there was always a TV program on called Obsessive Compulsive Cleaners. And it was all about people who were cleaning all day. And then everyone who was clean all of a sudden thought they were a little bit OCD. And which made it even more difficult, because these guys who on this program have severe OCD. They couldn't leave the house all day because they're having to clean every single little bit of it. And Beckham actually is someone who's one day there's going to be a really good documentary about Beckham talking properly about OCD, because he's been trying to expose it for so many years, but the media just pick up on the little things, like the fact he likes to line his coat cans up, or he likes to line his football boots up, or put his left shoe on before his right shoe. When actually, if you watch him on any of the documentaries, you'll be able to see visibly how difficult it is for him. Like that recent one he did, you could see in the kitchen that he was literally picking up the thing, cleaning it a little bit, looking at it again, cleaning it, but no one really picks up on those things. They just pick up on the what we would call a quirk. Like we all have these little quirks. We might be a bit tidier than other people. We might be a bit messier than other people. We might like to line our screen up, because why wouldn't you want your screen straight? You just want it straight if you're like meticulous. Like I'm the same. But yeah, everywhere I go, I hear that. I'm a little OCD, but I try and it's difficult, but I try and tell them, you know, what it really is. And it's
not that, I like my TV on 25 when I'm listening to whatever. It's like you said, it's when you should be getting into bed, you're taking an hour and a half because you think monsters.
I don't know what, to be honest with you, the mad thing about that is I started to do it because I'd seen a film on monsters when I was a kid, but then I was never had any fears that there'd been monsters in my cupboard. It was just a part of it. Yeah, became a part of my daily routine.
And that's clearly debilitating, because the ones I do know of is like the people that when they turn a light switch on, it's 125 times or whatever. There's a certain number that they have to get to of on off. So
that's definitely falls into that bracket, because as you can imagine, that's frustrating. And actually that is one that I do, and it's actually really annoying as well, because it's like the light, it's bad enough, do you know what I mean, when it's flickering. So most people, it's not to say that these things aren't a part of it, like it's just there's more to it than just, you know, maybe flicking off on and off ones.
So does this still affect you to today?
Yeah, massively. Yeah, it's and I didn't actually realize it was still there, the ritual and routine element of it, because I was so my mind was taken over by the thoughts, intrusive thoughts, rumination, which is another form of OCD, which is the most, I believe, to be the most debilitating side of it, the one that people cannot see. There's no visible. It's just you're just struggling inside with thoughts, which came at slightly later in life, but you know, even to this day, I drive my missus mad, because it's like we got a dog, and it's during COVID. It was the best thing I ever did. It's like the best thing ever, but I'm like up in the night, is he okay? Heard a noise downstairs, need to go and check on him, and I have to do all my checks again, check the back door, check the front door, stick my head in the door, you know. It's all these little things that are just, everything takes a lot longer. And I really didn't realize it until I had therapy like 3 or 4 years ago, and we sort of went right back, and we were like, are you doing this still? And there was things like getting my cereal out in the morning. I'd basically get the box out, pour a little bit in, put the box back, and then I'd get it back out again and pour a little bit in, and I'd do the same with the milk. So I was doing everything twice, and I was like, I'm actually still doing this, but because I was literally consumed and controlled that bad. I mean, I had no life for nearly 10 years. It just went under the carpet. So it's always there. But the good thing is I can the only way to overcome it is to not do what your mind's telling you to do. So if your thoughts are telling you to go and check the door, but you know you've checked it, then the only way to overcome that is to not do it. And
How do you do that?
Yeah,
because if there's the compulsion is there to check it.
But then I have these moments where I think it's like I just have this feeling I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that today, and I stop, and then it might disappear for a bit, for a month or two. Sometimes they don't come back, and sometimes it does.
Is it like an unconscious thing? So if you catch yourself doing it, you can go, hey, shut that off.
Sometimes, but it's so much easier to just do it, because if I just do it, then I know I can rest. But I don't know what's going to come if I don't do it. It's like I've got upstairs, multiple times, and I've lied in bed and I thought, oh, I wish I'd have done that. I need to do it. I need to go straight back down and do it, because it's just too the power of the thought and the feeling just drags you back down into it.
Doesn't allow you to relax.
No, doesn't allow you to chill. So it's like, do I want to sleep tonight or don't I? I think I want to sleep, so I'm going to go back down and do it. And there's all sorts of stuff like that I'll do. It's I could probably talk about it all day.
I think it's fascinating because, like I said, I think my perception of OCD probably is the more David Beckham public facing angle of it, not the. I am aware of the people that have to turn the light on and off hundreds of times, but I've never really deeply thought about how that impacts your life. And obviously, like you said you lost 10 years to it.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone particularly would. And this is the reason why you look at people who are talking about OCD and they're so passionate about like just cutting people down and saying this is wrong, But for me, it's like, how's anyone going to know unless you've either directly experienced it, or you've like yourself, or someone who has. It's impossible. And every Christmas, guaranteed, there's a Christmas jumper that says obsessive Christmas disorder in big letters on it. You would not see that for any of the other top 10 most debilitating diseases in the world. And it's really tough for us. And even I don't watch this program, and probably not the right place to talk about it, but I'd seen something on Twitter a couple of years ago about Khloe Kardashian talking about how she had CLO-CD. She'd named it because she had to line a table up in a certain way, and she was really grateful she had it because her mum had given her that. Her mum had the same thing, and it got challenged. And actually, it was one of the best things that happened, because she had to take it down. She had to publicly apologise for misunderstanding it, because the whole OCD world went mad on her. And it sort of went out to millions of her followers, so more people would have probably understood it. But how do you understand something that's so often, I guess, misconceived?
Well, I think understanding it's one thing, but then overcoming it or treating it, can you treat it? Or is it more of a, how do you treat it? So
the general route for therapy through the NHS is they pretty much use CBT, which, from what I've been made aware of by sort of professionals in specifically focusing on OCD, it's not always the best treatment. There's another one called ERP, which is exposure response prevention, and there's a really good book by a guy called Jeffrey Schwartz. It's called Brain Lock. I read that book and it literally changed everything for me, to be honest with you, because it teaches you how to. When you have the thought, like if I had the thought now that I had to, tap that microphone like 2 times, and my mind would, you sort of expose it for what it is. I've got OCD. It's a severe illness. I don't actually need to do this, and that would be your response. I don't actually need to do this.
So you say that out loud.
Yeah, you say it to yourself in your mind. I had to go through it so many times, and then your prevention would be then I'd think about something else. So it might be thinking about what I'm going to have for lunch, but. Like what I did was when it got really dark and it was more the thoughts, the intrusive thought side of it, I used to think about running the London Marathon. That was I had a place on it, but because of COVID, it kept on getting pushed back. So that was my my prevention side of it, and it was really bad because when I ran it, I felt like I'd run the London Marathon like 1,000,000 times. So I was running down the mile, I was like, I'm not feeling anything. And I expected to feel something, but it felt like I'd just been there so many times because I'd used that as my form of prevention the whole, for years. And I was, on average, I reckon I was having an intrusive thought probably every 20, 30 seconds when I was really struggling. God. Yeah. And I couldn't think of anything else. And that came at, a couple of years later, to be honest, when I was, 21 years old. That's when things got really dark and it totally changed. And up until that age, I was I was like that lad that brought everyone together, like massive friendship circles. At secondary school, I was able to leave a lot of this stuff at the gates, which was quite interesting. But other things surfaced. I was undiagnosed ADHD all the way through school. Back then, they thought ADHD was like kids who were naughty. They were like, he's not naughty enough, they were saying to my parents, because I was actually a really nice kid, but I was just really like mischievous and like I couldn't focus, couldn't learn like the other kids. And some days I could learn like the other kids. I was actually finished the class before they'd even started, but some days I just couldn't even get going. And that was most of the time. And but through school, I guess I was able to mask it. I think I was playing so much sport as well. Like that was the thing that I reckon really helped me. And maybe the turning point was maybe leaving school when we were going out drinking more. And I actually never took drugs ever because my mum was a school nurse and I listened to her for that in particular. And I'm glad I didn't, because I think it could have been a totally different story if I had discovered drugs. But like up until the age of 21, I was like, the happy guy, world at my feet, no trauma, raised in a really beautiful family, lived in a nice area. I was very fortunate, like went to a good school. And I went out on a night out when I was 21. And what triggered it was nothing to do with me, which is the mad thing. It was something I'd seen, and it was one of the lads who were on the night out with us. He's not someone in my circles now, but it was like someone on the edge of our circles. And I'd seen him that night cheat on his partner, but I sort of knew the girl, and it really like annoyed me that he'd done it because my morals were off the chain, which is also really common for people with OCD. And I woke up the next morning. We all woke up at this one of my mates' house, and I said to him like, why did you do that? And it was his response that sent me on this mad spiral that ended up lasting like 10 years. Losing 10 years basically in my life to these thoughts and couldn't basically live. And he turned around to me and said, I don't remember doing it, so it didn't happen. And I said to him, well, I saw you do it, so it definitely happened. And it wasn't, and then all of a sudden I wasn't annoyed with him. I sort of started to think like, I'm in a relationship, what happens if I've done something? But I don't remember doing it. And that's what started it. And I was like, all of a sudden I'd become obsessed. I was going through the nights out that I'd been on. I was thinking about like, could I have done it? I was having to ask girls that I'd met on nights out. I didn't do anything daft that night, did I?
And what's mad is he was probably just lying.
Yeah. Well, he was lying. That's what I mean. He knows he's done it because I watched him. Yeah. So,
but that sent you on a spiral.
Sent me on a spiral
because he's not telling
the truth.
Even if he'd have just brushed it off, it probably would have been better than going. It didn't happen. Don't remember.
And it's not to say this stuff might not have come about, because there was a sign maybe 4 or 5 years ago of a brief period where I had this doubt of like, imagine if you could have done this. But it was the crazy thing about it. I think the hardest thing about it was it started off with about cheating. So it was everything, but everything was like, could I have cheated? Could I have done something on that night? And then all of a sudden, like within a couple of months, it came into effect for everything I was morally against. So it could have been, I could watch the news and someone had been like attacked like near my house, or like something had happened like within a mile radius, and I'd have been like, my mind had been like, you could have done that, you were near there at that time. And it got that dark. I literally went from having these thoughts, struggling severely with like anxiety, like constantly. It was almost like someone was playing a tape, rewinding it, playing it back, rewinding it, playing it back. And it literally drove me that low. I was stuck in this state of depression that I physically couldn't think of anything else. Like it was almost like a psychotic state. Like the thoughts didn't make any sense, but I was living the fear and guilt that was attached to it as if I'd physically done it. And I could sit with a thought of that. I could watch the news and that could last a month. The police are going to find out it's you, Oly. That is how bad it got. And I could not snap out of it. I could not find my way out of it.
Yeah, this isn't lining up Diet Coke cans in a line.
No, this is what I mean. And this was the interesting bit. And about 2 or 3 months after that, I ended up taking this opportunity. I was working in the gambling industry, and I thought I'm going to take this job that they'd offered me prior to everything going wrong, and it was in Gibraltar. And I was like, this is perfect because I'm not talking to my mates. I've deleted everyone, deleting people off social media, deleting everyone out my phone, but refusing to talk to people. Mum and dad are like, why aren't you leaving the house? Why aren't you going out? Why aren't you seeing your friends? My friends are like, where on earth is he? So I thought, this is great. I can get away. They're not going to know anything. So I moved to Gibraltar, started to work I moved to Spain, working in Gibraltar. And whilst I was over there, things got really, really bad quite quickly. And it was really obvious to people I was working with, they could see. And there was like a smoking area
Was you hiding this prior to that?
Yeah, totally. I couldn't.
Apart from your family.
Yeah, I didn't. Even then, I didn't know what to say. So there was still a lot of stigma back then around. We're talking when I was probably 16, 17 years ago now. There was a lot of stigma around it. I didn't actually know what was going on myself. I didn't have any idea that it was anything to do with OCD, if I'm totally honest. And ended up, there was a smoking area on the roof. It was like 7 floors up, and I'd go up there, and it got to a stage where I was having these thoughts like on a daily basis that I shouldn't be here and I need to jump, like I need to give up, like constantly, like you need to give up, you don't belong here. And I just had my mum and my dad in my mind, like always. I never want, it's a difficult one. It's like, it wasn't something I was planning to do. It was just a thought that was going through my mind. It wasn't like I've got a plan here and I am actually going to go through with this, but it was just constant. Like you shouldn't be here. You're a bad person. You've done all these bad things. And I was really lucky that I was like walking home from work after one of those days, and I bumped into this guy called Ashley. And Ashley had actually trained before he moved out there, before everything went wrong. And he turned around to me and said, "Ollie, I'm really worried about you. Like you've totally changed over the last 6 months." And I just sort of like said, "I don't know what's happening." I couldn't explain it. And he said, my partner, she works in the hospital. She's a psychiatrist. And, they'd moved over together, and just said, "I'm going to send her around to come and have a chat with you." And she literally sat me down for 5 minutes. She goes, "I know exactly what's wrong with you. You've got OCD." And I was like, this is not, I actually took a look at my flat and I went, "Does it look like I've got OCD? Look at the state of my flat." I genuinely said that. And she was like, it's not about cleaning. It's not about being tidy. It's about, you've got it in a much more severe way, intrusive thoughts, rumination, negative images. And it's just, as you can imagine, how the rituals and routines play out, you're constantly sort of having to manage these compulsions. It's the same pretty much within the mind. It's just these thoughts constantly. You sort of find a way to deal with one thought, and then another one comes back. And it's just like someone's playing a tape and back and forth, rewinding it back and forth. It's just impossible. Couldn't live.
Mate, I'm just trying to think. You say you lost 10 years. I don't know how you're getting up in the morning with.
Well, I couldn't. Yeah, that was another thing. Like I was around about a year and a half. When would it have been? No, sorry. So about a year later, I moved back because they were like, "You can't be here." Like,
I was going to say, could you even function at your job?
I had to they noticed quite quickly, and they were like, "Nah." And then I went back, and I was sort of in and out of jobs for a couple of years, hiding from people, couldn't go out to I every so often I'd try and show up at something, but I had to go, so I just couldn't.
Does that make it worse?
Yeah, it was made it a million times worse, because a lot of my stuff revolved around sort of the drink side of it, really. It was about like going out on nights out and things like that. It revolved around that sort of thing, and I couldn't put myself in that position because that's where I felt I was like the most vulnerable. But then the more difficult side of it, I guess, was the one I was speaking to you about, like with the news and things like that. But then one of the harder things was like, I remember having to go and see my friend because I was like, I need to tell someone about this. And she was the only person I'd ever spoken to. And she was in London. She'd just moved back from, they'd been over in France, in Lyon, where her partner was a pilot. And they'd moved back, and she was the only, my school friend, the only person that ever mentioned any of these like rituals and stuff to her or anything. I was like, I need to speak to her, so I'm going to go and see her. So I went to see her. And I got on the train, right? And at this stage, I was literally having to document like my every single move I was making. And the iPhone notes, how you get date and time stamp for everything, right? It was great, but it was terrible because it was like a catalyst, basically. I was just feeding the OCD. But I'd have to write stuff like, you looked at the person, you didn't hurt them. You looked at the girl, you didn't cheat. And there'd be hundreds of notes in my phone, like all day long. Like I'd go home, read it, and it'd be like, it'd take me an hour and a half to read through all the stuff I'd written, because everywhere I went, I was documenting everything I did. And I got to the station, and like one of the worst ones at the train station was walking past people. My mind would be like, imagine if you push that person. And do you know something that's really common thought, believe it or not? 20% of males have that thought. I think it's like 15% of females have that thought. Of pushing someone when you're at a train station, or you're and I know probably like it's going to all sound a bit wild to you, but it's common. But the difference is with OCD, and when I'm in such a dark place, is my mind, I could have that thought, write it in my phone, leave the train station, and then my mind would be like, but what happens if that wasn't actually a thought? What that really happened?
What if it's a memory?
Yeah, and then I remember at one point being stuck with that one thought for 3 months, thinking that the police are still looking for me. Do I need to go back to the St Pancras and just double check? And I was walking through, I checked the CCTV. I was walking through St Pancras, and I remember just sitting on the floor. I was like crying my eyes out. I didn't know what to do. Like I didn't even know where to. I only just made it to hers because she came and met me in the middle. I couldn't, it was, life had just become virtually impossible.
Well, yeah, I can't imagine the amount of documenting that you need to do, especially like if you're walking past, that amount of people and thinking that you could have hurt, injured, cheated on every single person you've walked past.
And I sort of ran away from the relationship that I was in back then anyway, quite early on. I found myself in another one about 6 or 7 years into it, and I'll tell you how. It's actually really lucky. So I found myself got into this relationship. I was sort of having moments where I felt I could potentially work, and I'd managed to get a job back in the industry in Leeds, and it was a good opportunity for me to sort of be away from Sheffield, so I didn't have to be like near everyone, so I could just be in my own little space. And I knew one of the people who worked there, and she didn't realise what struggles I'd faced. So she had seen me from my previous job like 7 years before, and ended up moving over there. And I met Emma, my partner. She's my wife now. It's a miracle. It's an absolute miracle. But we met in training, and she'd just come out of a relationship. The way I describe our relationship is meeting Emma is kind of like a Jet2 holiday where you don't know whether to go all-inclusive or not. And I went all-inclusive and ended up with 3 kids overnight, right? And all my mates that were left, which were 2 of them, were saying, get away, she's got kids. You're already struggling. You can't even focus, you can't live. But I'm telling you something, these kids literally taught me how to love in a different way, live in a different way.
Was that a change of focus, maybe?
100%. They changed everything. And she did as well. And she just saw something in me then. Maybe what I am now, what I've been able to sort of find my way back to.
So how do you go from the psychiatrist in Gibraltar that goes, I think you've got OCD. It sounds like it's a while before you get close to fixing that.
Yeah, it's such a long time. That was probably 2 years in, or a year and a half in. And there was another 8 years. And that 8 years, I met Emma probably 6 years into that. And up to that, having that diagnosis was great. I understood what was wrong with me, but it never really changed anything. Like I couldn't really come to terms with it. Some of the thoughts were awful, and it was everything you can think of that you're not. Your mind's telling you that you're that person all day long. So it's like, think about what your mind could be telling you. Wow. And the people I meet now, like there's all different types of OCD. So there's like religious OCD where, I'm speaking to men who are happily married who their mind's telling them they could be gay when they're not gay and they should leave their relationship. I speak to women who are unable to bath their own kids because their mind's saying there's something called POCD, which relates to paedophile OCD, where your mind's telling you could be that when you never are and you could never do anything like that. So they can't even bath their own kids. It gets so dark, honestly. It's everything that you're not. Your mind is saying you could be that person.
What's the origin of that?
Absolutely no idea. Yeah, it's just I don't know. It focused on everything that you hate, everything that you despise. So that could be that. It could be there's pure OCD where it can be pretty much about anything really, that like probably what I was going through, cheating, hurting people, harming people, all that stuff.
Do people end up getting like sectioned over this?
I'd imagine people might get sectioned, but I think one of the biggest problems I reckon it's probably the one that impacts the suicide rate, probably one of the most. Because if you can imagine, like as a person, like the woman was saying to me that her kid just brushed past her once, and she'd seen something on a podcast about someone talking about POCD, and she was like, imagine if I did that on purpose. Do you know what I mean? Something as little as that has caused her, to not be able to even bath her own children. And
I know depressive thoughts spiral when you're depressed.
Yeah.
The OCD one sounds like they spiral at the first drop of anything.
Absolutely. And that's what happens, because you can go from being right up here, like to suddenly, boom, you're gone, and it gets you and it catches you. And unless you manage it and you know how to manage it or deal with it, or you have that technique that I maybe spoke about earlier, like the ERP side of it, it's just, honestly, it's frightening how bad it can get.
Wow. So the technique that you're using, just to reiterate, 'cause honestly, I think if there's anyone watching this, I think they need it, is if you recognize it, you need to go, this is OCD.
Well,
and
you probably
don't
need to do. You probably do need to see a specialist. But there is a really good book called Brain Lock that I mentioned that it does teach you the general of how to manage these thoughts. And the reason why I ended up reading that book is because when I was that bad, my mum and dad were like, "We need to find the best specialist in the world," and we found this guy in Italy.
Did that pull you out then, reading the book?
It certainly helped because I used to listen to it once I was out, and I started to get myself out a little bit, but. We couldn't, we found one guy in Italy, and the first thing he said to me is, "Have you ever read the book Brain Lock?" And I was like, "No." And he was charging like £200 for half an hour session. And my mum and dad were like, "Well, if it's going to help, we need to help you." And I thought he was just fobbing me off with this book. So I was like, no. Anyway, I found another guy in America, totally not related to him. The first thing he asked me was the same thing. "Have you ever read Brain Lock?" So I thought, I'm going to read it. And then since then, I've read it, and every person I speak to now it's helped them on that journey. And look, it takes time. It's not something that just changes overnight, but it can be.
It's education.
Yeah, it's education. It can be a massive help. And that period, going back to your question, that period, it went on, for years. Like, what those, I could hear the kids when I got with them, like, 7, 8 years in, I could hear them downstairs at 7. I used to lie in bed from 7. And I wouldn't open my eyes till 1 PM. Literally would not open my eyes. I knew it was 7 because I knew they were getting up for school. But then I could hear it, and then obviously it'd be quiet. But I wouldn't sleep. I'd just be lying there with my eyes closed because as soon as I opened my eyes, everything just came back, like at 1,000,000 miles an hour.
So what was it that got you out of that and got you functioning?
The first turning point for me was. About a year after meeting him, like my new workplace, obviously then realised that something isn't right with this guy. Like we like him, but he can't really work. And I was, shying away, sitting in a corner. Like if I ever had to go into work, I was just like sitting in the corner working, like not really talking to people. And I remember my manager at the time, he came up behind me and he was called Rick, and he put his hand on my shoulder and he went, "I'm really worried about you." And I just said, "I'm really worried about myself." And I turned, like literally, and I honestly, I was so emotional. He took me into a room and he sat me down and I said, "Look, for the first time, I blurted it all out." And I'd only ever spoken to Emma about it, my wife, and my mum and dad about, and my brother and sister who have always been there, and 1 or 2 friends that supported me all the way through. And, I hadn't really spoken about it that openly then. And he said to me, I never forget it, he turned around, he said, "Ollie, you can take up to 3 months off here and we'll pay you." And I was like, "Is that a good idea?" Because I thought I built this structure and routine around. I was trying to get back into work. I wasn't trying to get away from it again and be back at home like I'd been.
It's probably helping on
Yeah,
something.
I thought it was. And he explained it and he said, "Look, we're going to get you some support, some help." And if I'm honest with you, I'm really grateful for that organisation, the Sky Betting and Gaming I was working for. What they did for me then was huge because there was no pressure on me coming back. They signed me off. All of a sudden I felt, I've got great people around me now, but I've also got a great organisation that care about me and they want to support me. And I woke up that next morning, having been to the doctors the night before, because I went straight there and they agreed and they said, "You probably do need to take at least 3 months off, but we're going to sign you off for 1 month at a time." So they signed me off for a month. And I woke up that next morning and it was not too dissimilar to what it usually was. I struggled to open my eyes, but about 10 o'clock, I thought I need to do something because I thought I've got great people there. I've got great people at work who are backing me now and believing in me, and I'm getting paid. I don't have to worry about the money. And I made a decision that day that changed my life. I believe it saved my life. I went into my cupboard, I pulled out some old like gym kit that I hadn't worn for probably 10 years. It was hot outside. I left the house, started to walk a little bit. And then after maybe 2 minutes, I started to run, and then I started to walk and run, walk. And then after about 40 minutes, I'd run and walked about 5 kilometers. And when I stopped, like everything just stopped in my head for the first time. It didn't stop when I was running. It was hard, but then it just stopped, and it lasted about 5 minutes, but I absolutely just lived for that feeling from that day. And I've run every day since. Like literally, some days I get 5 minutes at the beginning, some days I'd get 10 minutes, and sometimes it'd be, you know, my missus would be like ringing me like, where are you? And I'd be like, before she could track me, now she can track me, which is terrible. But I'd be like 2 hours away in Bradford. So I'm like 2 hours away, I'd be back in 2 hours. Like, and I'd be running some days I was running like 40, 45, 50K, like ultra marathon distances, just out there all day, just trying to get on top of it.
With no training? How long did it take to build up to that?
I mean, I got up to, I discovered running on the 30th of July, 2017. I ran on the 10th of September, I ran a 120 kilometre ultra marathon. And I had to do it because one of the guys who I was supporting, because about a month later, I was like, I need to share this story.
Wait. Give me them dates again.
So the 30th of July, 2017, I discovered running.
So let's call it August.
Yeah.
So the start of August, we're talking 6 weeks.
Yeah, 6 weeks.
Oly, how did your knees survive?
Not that well, to be honest. I had bad trainers as well.
How did your feet survive it?
Well, what happened was it was a very different type of race, because there was a guy who, I set up Run For Your Mind, which is a mental health sport page, right? So I thought within a week I set that up, I was like, I need to start talking about this. Like I need to start sharing it and talking about, like, because it's helping me, it could help anyone. And the way I was always describing it was like, it was almost like the thoughts were chasing me. And then it was really hard when I was running, but when I stopped, I had these moments of respite that I'd never had before. And I just lived for that feeling. And I could make decisions in that whilst I felt that I could, you know, I planned to propose to my wife after a run because I had like 15 minutes to think clearly. Some days it lasted 15 minutes, 5 minutes, an hour, it just depends. I think it was actually the 20th of September, thinking about it, actually that run, because what happened was I met this guy very early on, and he was like me. He discovered running, but he was actually a total different beast. Like he was just running that sort of distance every day. It was absolutely wild, and he'd overcome addiction, and he became like my first little, I guess, ambassador for Run For Your Mind. We were chatting all the time, and then I got a phone call from his missus to say he'd passed away after a run. He'd had a heart attack, and we'd planned to run that race together. So I had to run it, had no choice. But the run and the race was called Equinox. So, you know, I was actually a little bit disappointed. I thought I could have got a bit further, because you get 24 hours to just run a loop. I don't know if you've seen them, but you get like, it's basically like a 10K loop of like Belvedere Castle, I think it's called. And you just run 10K loops, as many as you can in 24 hours. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was pretty happy with that. I think it was like 120 kilometers I ended up running. Might have been there was two. I did one, and I did one called Endure. One of them I got about 115. One of them I got just over 100. So it was one or two. It was at least 100 anyway.
In 6 weeks, so you did a 5K run walk,
and then
6 weeks, 7 weeks later, did 100 kilometers.
Yeah. But it was different to the 100 kilometers, because it wasn't like I had to run all the way. Do you know what I mean? You can walk and run and walk and run.
It doesn't make it easier. Oh my God.
But that's just, that's sort of my personality, I guess. Like, I think it's the same with anything.
There's people with addiction that I'm finding increasingly. I've just started running. I run more now than I ever ran. Even when I was in the army, I didn't run as much as I'm running now. And it's only, I keep getting a calf pull, which stops me. I was talking to my wife last night, and she hates running. And I said, I feel good when I run. And I said, but not in, like, I always hear people talk about the happy endorphins and stuff like that. And I was like, and it's not that. It's not. I said, it's like an identity thing. Like, I feel happy in myself when I run. Yeah. Like, I feel fit. I feel capable when I run. It's not. I don't enjoy it, but I enjoy who I am when I run, almost. Which I think I don't really know how to explain that.
Yeah, no.
But I see a lot of people. Jay, who sits through there, he's struggled with addiction. He runs 5 and 10K a day. He's got a mate that's doing ultras and Ironmans and stuff like that, and he's used that to sort of overcome addiction. What do you think it is about addiction, or what some
probably the pain
thing?
Yeah, and I think that it's so linked. There's two things that I really link to that, because I think even though I don't think I've got an addiction, I've got such an addictive like personality. So it's like, I think when people saw me starting running, they would have thought, oh, he's not going to stick that out. It's just a bit of a phase, because I used to go through phases and I'd just buy everything, because that was another problem I had. I'd try and like, when I was struggling, I'd just buy things to try and make me feel better, but actually no, I'd come and I wouldn't even open them sometimes. I'd just find boxes in it's quite common with ADHD as well. But there's two things. The cold water has been incredible for me in my journey, like doing 4 minutes just in a nice cold shower every day. Like when I wake after my run, it's meant to give you like an extra 2 hours focus, especially for people with ADHD. It's like, there's nothing that really comes close.
It's real dopamine, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's the same with addiction. Like that's why a lot of people turn, from being addicts to then the cold water stuff and the swimming and all that stuff. And then, but I just think the running side of it, you just get maybe that same level as like of high and the feeling afterwards, like nothing really comes close to that. So.
There's got to be something in that.
Yeah.
There's definitely some sort of correlation. I did see someone that managed to overcome a cocaine addiction by cold water exposure, ice baths, and you think,
well, you get the dopamine hit from a cold water at the right level is meant to be sort of double the amount you get from cocaine, which is the only thing that you can get double the amount from.
Yeah, and longer lasting.
Yeah,
supposedly
2 hours.
well.
Yeah, and obviously don't feel as bad from it. I've never took it, but I can imagine it's not great. Well, yeah,
I don't think there's a doctor in the world that's like just have a dabble and see how it goes. That's insane, though, isn't it? Like, I think we don't fully understand what dopamine does for us. No. And I wonder how much of your OCD was you was getting dopamine from doing the things you were doing.
Yeah, that's it. And I think that one of the sort of the biggest turning points I had was getting that diagnosis of ADHD later in life, because like what that did for me is I actually got put on medication, and I didn't realise, and so many other people will probably maybe not realise it too, but if you have got OCD, the chances of you having ADHD are pretty, there's a huge chance. And you look at the two together and you write all the things down, the signs, everything like that. They're all sort of like massively like they overlap each other. And when I got diagnosed with the ADHD, it was funny. I went to London. I started sort of trying to figure it out because a friend had told me they thought I had it, and I was like, I'm not going on the wait list again. So I'd waited so many times, and I was sort of getting myself in a slightly better place, and I ended up going to London. My other friend had said, like, there's a guy in London, he's the best in the UK. It's called Dr. Oly. I was like, okay, I'll go and see him. And I thankfully, my mum and dad helped me to go and get that, to pay it. It was 1,500 quid, or 1,200 plus to get the meds the first time. And it was so funny. He was sat in this big chair in London, and spent 2 hours with him, and he goes, you've got ADHD. I'm going to put you on medication. And I was like, oh no, not medication. I was like, it's not going to stop me running though, is it? And he pulled his chair up to me. He said, these, Mr. Newton, are performance enhancing drugs. If anything, you're going to be running a lot better. And he was right. I ran 4 minute PB on the half marathon at Leeds that weekend. And I've never, honestly, my missus missed me because she was like, he's not going to be here yet. And my missus' dad was like walking up to come and watch me. And there was like the leading pack of really good runners. And then you've always got like the 1:30 mark, which I was trying to get near. And I was just in between the two on my own. It was unreal. And yeah, it was right. They're really good. But they massively helped me. The main thing is...
And what were they called again?
They were called Albans. And what happened with them though was, which was the maddest thing, was they enabled me to control my thoughts for the first time. So not only was I able to, like, I had the running, I had that as well, and I could actually control my thoughts. So the thoughts that were coming in before that were really, I was saying to you, you can send yourself straight into that spiral. I was able to sort of say straight away and understand them. So having that, the two must be really sort of, the thought side of it, and I'd imagine they're just so heavily linked that, and so many people I've spoken to since then have had a similar experience. So not everyone gets on with those tablets. They don't work for everyone. But, the ones that I do know, honestly, it's like someone's installed like a HD TV into your head and like like 4K. It's like everything's amazing again.
So you're still taking that?
Yeah, I'm on it. I take it every single day after my run and my cold shower. It's brilliant.
So you're getting the real dopamine from the run, real dopamine from that, and then the thoughts are shut off.
I couldn't have a better start to the day.
Brilliant.
But if I didn't, like, this was a big thing for me. It was like, I used to set up a pint of water by my bed and my kit. I have to be out the door straight away, because before I used to get so consumed. Like if I lay there for 10 minutes, I'd be stuck, and I'd be stuck there for hours. So like I'm like, boom, straight out the door. I read something about this in a book. It was like, when I couldn't read books, I was listening to this. There was something like where you could get like 10 minutes of books on like this app. I can't remember what it's called, Headway. And I was listening to like little bite-sized chunks, and there was one, and I teach it across all the schools I go into now, and it's about this guy who basically written a book about getting out of bed, but like pretending you're like a spaceship. So it's like you count down from 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, and fling yourself out of bed, and he'd written a full book about it. It's brilliant. So now I'm just like 10, 9. As soon as my alarm goes off, boom, get me out of bed. If I don't, I can just be there, stuck there for ages. Don't sleep through the snooze, basically. Because the snooze then just massively impacts you anyway, because it's just broken sleep that you don't need. You want to be getting up straight away. I can't always do it, I'm not going to lie, but I try, and the kids love it as well. Like, you were helping the schools, and adults who speak to as well. So
yeah, that's literally what turned it. A combination of the running, getting on the medication, and cold showers, and that sorted you out.
No, I wouldn't say. I'd never say I'm sorted out, because I'm actually.
What do you say, manage?
I manage things better now. I think the real turning point was when I started to talk about it, and that was probably around about 3 or 4 years into the running journey, and I was like, I need to share this message. And I remember reading a quote in a book, learn to become comfortable feeling uncomfortable, and I ran downstairs to my missus, and I was like, this is what I need to do. And she was like, what are you on about? I was like, this is what I need to do. And we sort of came up with this idea, like we sat down for 5 minutes, we came up with this idea that if I could do the most difficult thing and challenge myself to overcome the hardest thing first, then maybe all the little things would fall back into place. And we sort of sat down, we looked at my time through school, what did I dislike, looked at my time through corporate, what did I dislike, and it sort of all boiled down to one thing, and it was speaking in front of people. Like, I couldn't do it, like standing up and speaking in front of people. The only time I did it at school was when I was in trouble, and that's probably, came from that, like stood at the front of assembly because I'd done something stupid. And in corporate, I could just never do it. I couldn't even go in, especially during that period when I was struggling, like I couldn't even go into a meeting room. I'd have to leave after like 5 minutes, and I had to explain it to them. Like, once that was when they sort of really started to understand me. And around that time, like my workplace had been really supportive, because I'd come back from this long period of sickness. I went back off again a few months later, because it didn't quite change everything straight away. And when I came back, it sort of fell into that, like around COVID time, and they were struggling to manage. There were so many staff. They were like, how do we help them when they're all at home? And I set up like a run club through the business. I got people, like 180 people from never running up to running. Like, some of them ran marathons during that period. It was brilliant, and they loved that. And then they were really supportive of me when we went back into the office. They put like run breaks in the middle of every shift to help me, which was just incredible. And they were just great. And I sort of had said to my missus, like, that this is what I need to do. And about 3 months later, I got an email randomly from one of the guys at work, and it was, we're doing something called the Untold Stories of the Business, and we want to share yours. And I was like, oh no, I've made a promise to do this. I need to do it. And it was at this event. They'd hired out this space in Leeds. It was like Leeds Bradford Airport, like this big like airport bunker, and it was on the set of Victoria, random, but they hired it all out and had different speakers and stuff, and like everyone was there. And I remember there's about 300 people in the room, and I had to share like 15 minutes of the journey, and I've never had so much anxiety in my life. Like, it was like anxiety on top of anxiety on top of anxiety. But after that, like, I left the room, and 2 of the managers took me to one side, and they said, and this is another thing that I'm so grateful for them for, they came up to me and they said, you need to leave. And I was panicking. I was thinking, like, what have I said or what have I done? I need to leave. This is what you should be doing. Like, you should be doing this full time, and we're going to get you there. And, a couple of them supported me in getting me on a speaking course to become a better speaker. Had nothing to do with my job. They just wanted to help me. And then on the back of that, it was like, we're also going to try and get you trained up to become an instructor through Mental Health First Aid England, so you can train mental health first aid. So then you can not just deliver talks, you can actually back it up, and you can support us. anyway, I ended up doing that, and then they just sent me on my way. And it was like, my first couple of talks were just wild, really. Like, it just went from that to being really relative, and still to this day, like, I was on like the cusp of a wave, really, because organisations were sort of, how do we help everybody when, we're just coming out the other side of COVID? We know what the wait lists are like, because they've got even more difficult and harder now. How do we help people? And
people struggled, didn't they, in COVID with, the isolation,
absolutely,
the social stuff.
And it was just I was maybe just perfectly timed for me to start trying to share what I'd been through, and just my first talk, like, and I'm not saying this in a way like check me out, it was more like what on earth's going on, but my first talk was for Microsoft, and then it was for Burberry, and then from there, because I just sort of did that, it sort of had
talk.
natural. I'm actually returning to Burberry next month, which is going to be amazing, because it's like a full circle thing, but it's taken me from there to, like, and it just went from there. Like,
so how long have you been doing the talks full time?
About 3 years now. I've been. I must admit, I held on to my Sky Bet job for up until about 2 years ago, because I got free Sky and I could just work the weekend. It was great, and then it was brilliant. And then just everything sort of fell into place, I guess, from there. And it's taken me all over. I've been in Canada working with like the Canadian Premier League, working with like tennis players over there, working in Italy recently. And every day I wake up and I sort of like ask myself two questions, like, how on earth is this even happening? And like, why? Yeah. And I just feel so grateful every day. It's just mad.
Does this feel like purpose then?
Absolutely. I think that's what it was. Like, I think the running enabled me to build a community. We've got probably 4,000 runners around the world that were running for the same reason. But what the speaking enabled me to do is probably what I always was meant to do in the first place. Like, if you ask my friends at school, like, or anybody, like, they'd probably say, if you ask them what would Oly be doing in later life, because I always cared for everyone. I wouldn't allow anyone to be bullied. I always supported people. I was sort of the guy that tried to, I might have been the cooler kid at school, but I wasn't the kid who was, I'd never make anyone feel smaller than who they were. I tried to bring everyone in, and they'd all say you'd probably be doing something to make a difference to someone, to something or someone or whatever. And yeah, I think purpose for me was the community I built, the people, finding my voice, sharing the stuff on social media, and then finding the confidence to set sail and to do it full time as a job.
You the stepping into doing it for corporate makes total sense. At what point did you go, I'm going to start bullying these corporates into paying for me to do this for schools?
It was one of the first concepts I came up with, and I thought this is a great way. And to be honest with you, like, what I didn't do is I knew what people charge for talks, and it didn't really impact the cost of how it should have probably impacted. It was just, I just said, look, included in every talk, I'm gonna make them sponsor a local school, and they can either choose a school, or I can sort of help them to. I've got about 136 on my wait list in schools, but not 136 schools, 136 talks. So some of them are bigger projects, and what I do is I'll go, like, for example, I was at the NHS, and like earlier on in the year, and I'll do a talk, and there'll be like 350 nurses in the room, and then I'll be like, at the end, I'm like, included in this is sponsorship of a school. Put your kids' schools in a hat, and let's pull one out, and let's go and do it together. And it works really nicely, and like, they love it. And then I'll invite them and whoever wants to come, the director of nursing or whoever you'd like to come, and we go to that school, and I co-brand my slides up with the NHS. And it's just a way of bringing, not only like getting me into the schools to be able to do the work and impacting probably a further 400 people, but actually the community side of it together as well, which is really nice. And it's probably one of the things I'm most proud of, like, about doing. And and on the back of that, I do get big projects where, like, organisations now will lean into their social value money, run projects on which I will deliver. Like, I'm heading did one in Folkestone recently. We're heading down to Bournemouth in a few weeks to do a big one there, where I think we've got about 15 talks across the week. Hopefully will impact about 5,000 kids. It's just brilliant. Like, and you know, every time I do these talks in schools, it's so special because, like, unless you've heard of this stuff that I'm talking about, you don't really hear anyone else talking about it. Like, you know, some of the stuff I've said to you today, you're probably thinking, what on earth is this? Like, what? Whereas these kids are the same, but there's, you know, in every single group I speak to, you probably get 5 kids who come and talk to you afterwards who have exactly the same sort of, especially the ones where it's the wardrobe stuff and the light switch and the touching, stepping on grates and stuff like that, really common. I think like 1 in 50 kids have it. Wow. So it's really, really common. But then they also have friends who have it and they come and talk to you. And then on a night, like, that's the hardest thing, trying to support kids, you know, who've come through your Instagram, who really need help and really don't have any support. And I've got quite a few sort of strays that I try and like do mentoring sessions with on an evening, which obviously I'm not going to earn any money from, but it gives me a lot of fulfillment because they don't really have that many people to talk to. So I can run sessions with them. Obviously I get their parents to say it's okay, and I don't just, you know, call it, it's hard though, because you want to be there for everyone, but you know, you can't. But yeah, it's just, I feel very lucky to be doing this now.
So what's the talk? Is it, you mentioned lived experience, is it just a case of like pretty much what we've covered in the podcast today? This is what I've dealt with? Yeah,
absolutely. I go through everything, the whole journey from being, you know, the start of touching lampposts, and I can tailor it to suit any sort of age group. So primary's a little bit more, I don't get as many in primary, but they're not doing that sort of stuff, so it's slightly different. But I can do really cool stuff with them, more workshop-based stuff, and I do a lot of stuff about stress. And I've got like this big, I don't know if you've ever seen the stress bucket analogy, but it's basically, I carry this huge bucket around with me. It's like a stress bucket and big bag of balls, and I ask them what goes into the stress bucket, and we chuck the footballs into the basket, and then eventually it starts to overflow. How do you feel when it overflows? And it's, you know, you feel, you might be agitated, you might be overwhelmed, and then, but what can we do to release some of the balls from the bucket before you become overwhelmed? And they love it. Like, and I do it with adults as well. It's great. I did it with the NHS, and then we've got the red balls that we put in for like the bad things that we often do when we're struggling, like vaping or drinking or taking drugs or not talking or like being, you know, aggressive towards people or whatever that may be. But yeah, that works really well. And then I just take them through the whole journey, and it works really nicely. I've actually got a really cool thing going. We're touring week after next, which is really exciting. This is even more surreal than a lot of stuff I've probably talked to you about. But after one of my talks at the NHS, I was approached by a woman who's a playwright, and she said, "Can I turn your story into a play?" And I was like, this is what is going on. And I had to think about it. And then we ended up chatting about it. And for a year and a bit, we've been planning it. And then we got funding from the Arts Council, and we've just done 5 weeks rehearsal. We've got an unbelievable cast, 2 guys. So basically there's 2 people. One of them plays me and the other one plays my thoughts, but they think they're friends at the start. So it's like people watching will think they're just 2 friends. One's really annoying friend, but it's actually the OCD saying, you know, do this, check this, do that. It's unbelievable. And I'm narrating it. So like I come in between scenes, and we've got a theatre. We've got 1,200 kids coming to Leeds Playhouse on the 3rd of October to start the tour. And then we've got, 19 other the sort of productions of it. It's going to be amazing. So yeah, just surreal things, really surreal things, but really exciting. So yeah, turning it into a play, who would have thought it?
What's the reaction from the kids in primary school? Are they maybe a bit too young to get it, or is there a few that still get it?
It's amazing. One of my favourite sort of age groups to work with is the year 6 to year 7, because I think it's probably one of the most untalked about like transitions that I think it's actually one of the most challenging transitions a kid will go through, because you can be like me in junior school or whatever primary school or whatever you call it, from being that, you know, the funny kid, the one who everyone likes, to suddenly going into secondary school where everything's really serious, and then you're not that kid anymore. You put on report and you suddenly change, and that's what happened to me. And so many kids can sort of really resonate with that. So I try and do, you know, I've got a really cool program that I do with the year 6s to year 7s transitioning, and I did one, you know, in the school holidays just gone, And honestly, it was like, it's amazing because there was like four kids put their hand up during what I was speaking, saying, I've got that, I do that. You know what I mean? And that just doesn't happen. Year 7 and 8, very similar. Sometimes people shout it out. You know what I mean? I do that. And they don't mean to say it out loud. Like it happened in a school recently. But then as they get older, then that's it. When it becomes a little bit more difficult, like year 10 and 11, a bit too cool for school sort of thing. And they don't really want to speak about it much. It's a little bit more challenging. But yeah, it's any age really they can take to it. And I had to help make like 2 or 3 phone calls to parents, like just explaining that what they've come to me and spoke to, because they're a bit younger. It's harder. So,
is there a difference then in the response that you get with adults?
With adults, what happens is a lot of them talk about their kids. So like they'll say, oh, I think my son's got that, or oh, I think my husband's got that, or my partner's got that. But I think with adults, it just creates really, really cool conversations within the workplace that people aren't having, where people are like, I know someone who I think does that, or I've got a friend who does that. And then, you know, a lot of people will come forward and say they've got OCD. They're obviously more forthcoming, they're open about, you know, the struggles. But it has a very similar impact everywhere. I think the younger people one is important because I don't want any kid to go through what I went through, and I want to
catch it early.
Yeah, and I want to be that voice that I think I probably really needed. If someone had come in and spoke about that when I was at school, then I'd have had a much better understanding about what I was going through, and I'd have probably been able to talk about it. But no one did.
Do you think it would have changed if you'd have met someone? Was it 13, 14 you said you really started? Or it got dark?
It didn't get dark until I was 21, really. So I wouldn't change anything. I think the whole purpose, I weirdly think it was meant to be. Like, I think I was maybe meant to go through that.
You had to go through the
potentially
depths of it
to get to where I am. Because I don't know what I'd be doing work-wise now. I'd be quite bored, I think, and probably working in the gambling industry still, like, which isn't overly healthy when you've got OCD and ADHD. And so I think everything's meant to be, but I still wouldn't want any young person to go through what I went through, because I don't think everyone can make it through that. I don't know how I got through it personally, because it was so bad.
What about the athletes that you work with or have worked with? Are they facing different angles with this?
What, the ones I work with to deliver like other speakers and things like that? It's not necessarily athletes. I generally just work with any lived experience speaker, anyone who's trying to make a difference. I mean, I say anyone. There's a lot of people that, you know, it's difficult. You have to find the right people to work with, as you can imagine. But I've got people who, you know, within the team now that speak about all different areas, like eating disorders, talk about, I've got a guy who identifies as a guy now, was born a girl, incredible person, talks about that transition, how difficult that was. Someone who talks about the racism, diversity, inclusion element of it. And we've got a really cool team, and it's great. And we can all, you know, I'm massively passionate about the power of lived experience side of things. We know that people are 22 times more likely to engage when something is spoken about in a story form than it is taught. So, you know, you go into a school where there's teachers teaching stuff all day, and then we come in and we speak about something, and then that just brings everything to the surface. So it's a great mission to be on, and I think the more conversations we can create, the more people we can potentially save, really.
Yeah, you spoke earlier about your comfortable being uncomfortable. Is that like a central part of the talks that you give? And what are you asking for from people being comfortable being uncomfortable?
I think for me, that is everything that I live by now. So it's always like, what is the reason why I'm on building sites is because that was in my mind was the hardest thing I could have done. Like, because that's going to be the place where you're putting yourself in a very, very vulnerable position with people who might always not believe in what you're saying, who are probably going to have an opinion, and they're not going to listen to you like they would in a corporate organisation.
Is that the case though? Have you found that though?
Yeah, you're not everyone likes what you've got to say. They're not there's certain people even in the team that I can only, some of these guys are working day in, day out, so they're working like 1 week on, 1 week off. I probably pick up about 7 or 8 1 week tours a year, because that's probably all I can accommodate because I've already got so much on. But it's a passion piece for me, really. It's like I care about that industry. I've got my own experience with someone close to me who I want to be there. I want to make sure I can sort of be there for more people like him. But yeah, it's a tough, very, very tough place to be in. But I think the learning to become comfortable, feeling uncomfortable, I think that's the message that everyone will take from, you know, what I'm saying. One thing I'm not stood up there on stage been like with this really polished like performance. This isn't what it's about. There's slides that I look at that where I'm, it makes me feel quite emotional. There's one in particular that I always talk about because ultimately the learning to become comfortable, feeling uncomfortable was a huge turning point for me. But it was never really about the things that the most difficult things. It was actually about the little things that mean the most. And I'll show you my screensaver on my phone after, and it's a picture of like me and my dad going out for a beer for the first time in 10 years. And that's what this enabled me to do. It wasn't actually really about the hardest things. It was actually about just being able to live. And that's what putting myself in the hardest positions it's allowed me to actually do the things that most people take for granted. Like I can go for a pint with my mates now, which I couldn't do for 10 years. I probably won't drink much because I'm not that bothered. I don't like to feel any different. It's like 1-2 pints and I'm done, or some days I won't even bother, and they don't mind. They're fine with that. But it's those little things that most people take for granted that really mean the most. And that's where I am now. And it's tough some days. It's always there in my head. I'm constantly got thoughts going around, but I can manage it much better through everything that I'm doing, having the run-in, having the purpose to get up every day and try and make a difference, and continue to try and to support as many people as I can. I've spoke to, I know across schools I've spoken to over 45,000 young people in the last 3 years across over 140 schools. And then you look at that, you could look at the organisation side of it, it'd be at least 30,000. So that's all I can do. And if it helps, it helps. Some people, not everyone's going to agree. Some people are going to be like, what's he on about? You probably thought it yourself at some point during the talk, like what? I can never imagine it to, what really? But it just gives people a little bit of an understanding of quite how difficult it can be.
Massively so, yeah. I mean, there's stuff I'd not expected in the slightest here. Something that I was looking at when I was going through the notes is me and you actually have a similar sort of message and phrase that we use when talking about checking in on your mates. The wording you use is always ask twice. I do a follow-up, which is, how are you? And then you always get sound. How are you really?
Yeah.
I said this a few times on videos now. I do this with my veteran mates. I should do it with my civilian mates as well. But where's that come from? And what's your experiences with that? And I guess you're probably doing it with a completely different audience than I am. What's
not too dissimilar to you, because you sort of, I try and ask it to everyone like we probably should really, because, and it's unbelievable the answers you get. And
it is a different answer the second time.
Totally different. And the kids, the people I speak to in organisations always come back and speak about it. And I actually, it's not my, you said yourself, about it. It's I got it from Roman Kemp. I'd seen him on a podcast, and he was talking about someone who was hugely supportive to him when he was struggling with his mental health. And he said he never asked him how he actually was. He just said, "You all right?" And he was like, "I'm fine." And he was one of the production team.
It's almost a greeting, isn't it? You're right.
Yeah.
It's not actually.
Not bad.
I'm not asking.
Yeah.
I'm not asking, "Are you all right?"
Yeah.
But I should.
Yeah. It's not. It's not even You're not even asking them really, are you?
It's just acknowledging that you're there. You're right.
It. Yeah.
And I think that's where that second ask.
It's unbelievable the answers you get. I mean, I asked friends in the pub, and they'd be like, "You can ask them," and they'd be like, "Yeah, sound." And then, "How are you actually doing?" Well, my my gran passed away recently, but it's been quite difficult at home, or my missus has left me. You would never even, people you don't know that well, saying, "Oh yeah, my missus has left me," or even, I think it's even easier for me because people now see what I'm doing because I'm so vocal about it. They can see it, and they'll probably want to talk to me, which is another difficult thing when you suddenly open yourself up to absolutely everyone and you sort of want to help everyone. But yeah, them answers, you find out all sorts of stuff in them moments. And so many people come back to me afterwards and they're like, I've asked that question again, and you know what? Like, I've got a mate that, you know, it didn't even want to be here, and I would never have known. But I would have, you know, looking at his behaviours and how he's acting on a night out, it would probably make sense. It's like, yeah. I mean, what's your experience been like when you're asking? I can imagine asking the veteran side of it. It's like,
I think I know. I don't know if I'm asking at the right times or if I'm catching something, and I go, I feel like I need to ask again here. You know, I haven't seen you on socials. I haven't heard of you. You've not been sending me stupid memes 15 times a day. You're all right. Like, and it might just be, oh, mate, just busy with work. You know, it is what it is. Sound. All right, no worries. Well, I'm here if you need us. Or, yeah, there's a couple where I've had, do you know what, I've been having a minute. Like, I've been having a, you know, I've hit the booze again. And I'm like, I'll ring you. Give me 10. And, I think it's been huge, and I don't know where I got it from. I wish I had a cool, like, I saw Roman Kemp doing a thing. I don't know where. I can almost remember someone, maybe they asked me, and it was are you sure? Someone said, are you sure? I can't remember the circumstances of it. And I just thought, I'm robbing that. Because I think...
It's brilliant, yeah.
Because and then when the first few times, do you know what? If I'd have got, I just said I'm sound, I probably wouldn't have ever followed up with anyone ever again. But I think the first time I asked someone, they went, like, give us a minute, I'm going to ring you. And I went, oh, shit. And then, you know, someone rang us and he was like, yeah, my head's all over the gaff. And I think for a bloke, that's enough. You're not going to get more, generally not going to get much more than my head's a fucking mess, mate.
Yeah, it's tough. That's it, isn't it? You can't... But what that does, I think, is it sort of plants a seed, and it means that they're going to be comfortable coming back to you and speaking to you at a later stage. And it's like with the work that I have to do, like there's one thing that we sort of everyone sort of avoids asking or doesn't always ask the right questions. It's around suicide. It's like what, and the only way you know if someone's suicidal is by asking them. That's the only way you can find out. That's what we have to teach. And you have to say to them, you know, so whenever a mate says to me, oh, I'm struggling, I'm going through a difficult period, like I know I've got to ask them the question of, I just want to check, have you thought about taking your own life? And, you know, people don't realise that just by asking that question, people think it plants a seed, so they won't ask it, which is not true.
I'd be scared of asking a veteran that.
Yeah. And
because they would come across as, well, have you thought about it?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the only... And do you know something? I've had to ask hundreds of people, like, over the years since I've been doing this. And I've only ever had one person who was really stand off about it. The rest of them appreciate it. I've been there, I've had that thought, but I don't ever have a plan, and they appreciate you asking them. You don't realise it. And then there was one person who was really stand off, and then, 2 weeks later, he came back to me and said, I'm so grateful you asked me that question the other day, because I had been feeling like that, and it made me think about it more. Like, made me think about, like, you know, the fact I do need to get help, not that thought, but the fact I needed to get support. And
I think I'm scared to ask.
Yeah, and that's what I think. Yeah,
because
one of the big things we teach in the mental health first aid course, which I'll 100% put you on for free if you ever want to do it, is just being able to ask that question. How do you ask that question? Yeah, because it is such a frightening question, and you're scared about what happens if they say yes, I do. And then, you know, what we do is then it's about supporting them to the next stage, getting them the right professional help, getting them, you know, just helping them with that. It doesn't mean that weight's on you. It's like, it's if anything, it's like bringing the right people and to support and be around that person and get them through it, you know, and I've experienced, I don't know what you've been through yourself, but I've experienced losing someone really close to me to suicide over the last couple of years, like someone who was like a second dad to me, like my dad's best mate, and, you know, unbelievable person. And I knew he was open with me. He told me it felt like that way, and we tried to keep him going. We moved him into our family home and we supported him, and you know, even we couldn't keep him alive. And you know, it's been really difficult, but I know that you can only know what you've done, and sometimes just asking that question can be the difference. And it shouldn't be it doesn't mean you should ever, you know, people then think about, oh damn, why didn't I know this before? But it's not about that. It's always, some people you can't stop it. Like it's really tough. I mean, like even Ricky Hatton recently, like who would have thought like that would have, I mean, he was very open about his struggles. He did loads of stuff in the mental health space around He's an ambassador for I think he was an ambassador for Calm, which is the campaign against living miserably, like suicide prevention.
He actually spoke extensively on some podcasts which I saw, which came out obviously in the aftermath of him passing away. And then there was a lot of his own social media posts that people had like resurfaced and reshared.
Yeah.
And I wonder, obviously you spoke about the person that you moved in with you. When people have been very vocal about it in the past, and they've had ideation of it in the past, is it ever fixed, do you think, or is it always kind of something that could end up happening? And how do you end up preventing that when someone's almost crossed the threshold and gone, yeah, I probably can do this?
There's sort of two different types of that we look at. So you look at the behaviour element of it, where you're actually displaying the behaviours of actually wanting to do it. Or you might have a plan in place, but then there's also the sport side of it, where the way I would describe my feelings when I was having like suicidal ideation, it was like almost like a train slowly going through the train station. Like it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to do this at 8:00 tonight. I know exactly how I'm going to do it. I've got a plan in place. And that was the difference for me. I certainly was in the right place to do it if I wanted to do it at times where, it could have become close to those behaviour element of it. But it's knowing if someone's got a plan and asking them, it's not easy to ask. Don't get me wrong. I'm not making out this is just as simple as, are you suicidal? Yes. Okay. Well,
it's all about not being.
Yeah, exactly. It's not that easy, right? But it takes a lot. But usually, like when we hear stories of like people finding someone on a bridge, it's like you're sort of trying to find something that a little bit of hope in something, and it might be asking them just, if you find someone in that state, it's like asking them questions like, so where did you grow up? What did you? And eventually they might say something like, and I've got a dog, and then they light up a little bit, and then they're talking about the dog, and then it's almost like that can be the turning point. You're trying to find a turning point, but it isn't always that easy, and it takes a lot. It isn't just a case of, oh, they've spoken about it and now it's how do we get them that help, how do we get them that support? And that might be professional help, that might be looking, one of the things that I literally shout about all the time is something called, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's called the Hub of Hope. And it was set up by a guy in Liverpool that I've met, incredible. And he set it up on an Excel sheet. It was just like to become like a database of like, I was saying to you earlier, like we don't all need professional doctor. We need to be on that wait list and we need to get that help. But actually, sometimes it's just people. And what he set up was like where local groups like Andy's Man Club and stuff could like promote what they were doing. And it started off being just on an Excel spreadsheet, and now it's the biggest database of mental health services. I believe it's definitely in the UK, but I think it's the biggest in the world, because you go on the app, you put in your postcode, and you choose if you're an adult or if you're looking for a child. And then what it does is it gives you multiple questions like, is it an eating disorder? Is it anxiety, depression, PTSD? What are these things you're going through? And then it narrows it down, and then you press search, and then it brings up all the local support groups within your area. And I seen a guy on my road, and I knew he was struggling with suicidal thoughts. His partner had told me, and I spoke to him about it. I said, have you looked at this? And we put in our postcode because we lived on the same road, and there was an Andy's Man Club like 400 metres away from our house, which neither of us knew about, which you could then go to, and you can speak to other men who are going through similar things. And sometimes, like, I honestly believe that's what you need. I think young people need to be around other young people who are going through maybe self-harming behaviours or eating disorders, so they can help each other through it, rather than been all this clinical stuff, which is definitely needed, but this is perfectly. And there's something called what's it called now, social prescribing. And basically what it is rather than prescribing people now, rather than prescribing medicine now, like doctors are now prescribing people in groups. So they're saying, you've spoken about the fact you used to play football. Did you know that this mental health football group you can go to? So rather than, because the demand's so high for like therapy and support, it's like they're now looking at other options, which is incredible. And, which is something that I've been looking recently about getting Run for Your Mind on, so we can try and, because initially with Run for Your Mind, it was about providing people with, I used to provide people with trainers, kit, running plans to get them from struggling to sort of getting back on their own 2 feet. And yeah, you mentioned earlier about the knees. Oh my God, like amount of people that come back to me after 2 weeks when I first started off saying, "Oh, my knees meant to hurt as much as this." I was like, just run 10K a day, you'll be fine. But obviously then I realised you can't do that, and it's like, now I've got a proper plan. But yeah, these support groups are just, it's amazing. And there's loads of them around you. OCD groups, in all these places that you just, and that's what I think people really need.
I wonder if people are not seeing the wood for the trees, or they're seeing the other way around. Like, the support group's obviously effective, but is it a lack of general socialising that's happening, maybe? And that's what we're lacking, that, you might get the same support or comfort or help if you join a mental health football team.
Yeah.
You might get the same things joining a football team.
Yeah.
Like, you might get the social connection, the outdoors, the fitness. Like, I think all of those things are probably, yes, if you've got specific things, having someone that's maybe a specialist in a certain area is probably helpful. But I wonder how many, general problems can be helped, if not go away, by just more social activity. Because I don't think we've got that third place anymore.
No.
It's work, home.
Yeah. And not
Netflix ain't a third place, man.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And unfortunately for kids, it's computer games, isn't it, now? And I've sort of got two arguments for that side of things, because I've got kids who are, on one of them's autistic, two of them are autistic and ADHD, and he actually, my middle child, communicates way better online. He doesn't actually communicate very well, and that's because of how he is. And I think there's a place for it. It just needs to be limited. Like, there needs to be, you can't be on it all night, and just that's the only thing you do. But I do agree with you. I think there needs to be. I think what's good about the groups, especially when they're specific about mental health, is the hardest thing is to turn up to a group when you don't know anyone. And if you just go into a football team that's serious, or you just go into, do you get what I'm saying? Like, whereas with this, it's not really serious. It's just lads who've got the struggles, or they might be overweight, or
yeah, maybe it takes the
certain
pressure,
and
down.
Everyone's welcome, and everyone knows that person's struggling too, and that's the reason why they're there. Sort of like with the Andy's Man Club stuff, like, you wouldn't just try and go out and meet a group of people socially. It's hard, isn't it, to sort of, but if you sort of, you fall into that category, it's a little bit easier, yeah. I think, maybe.
Yeah, but I think there's something in those communities, whether or not they're specifics. I think having professionals or a theme is absolutely helpful. But
yeah.
I just think that there's probably something in just the lack of socialising. I mean, around here, I'm not a part of any of them, but there's so many run clubs. And have you seen the amount of people?
Yeah, I know a guy in Manchester, Herman, who runs Made Running, and it's just so many people go. I think he gets thousands on a weekend.
It's insane, isn't it?
It's amazing.
And it's like, we're meeting at 5:30 a.m. We're all going to get a carrot cake, and then we're going to run 10K. And you're like, and there's 900 people turned up. Yeah. What is going on? Like, they run, it looks like a marathon's running through the city centre. And you're like, what is going on? But there's loads of them, isn't there?
Yeah,
and people are paying quite a bit to be part of them as well.
I think running now is, I think theirs is just, as far as I'm aware, it's free, but there'll be events and stuff. But I think running now it's gone up. Like, the interest in it is like literally doubled, I think, over the last couple of years. Like, and that's probably because of COVID, groups, people.
Nothing else you could do, was there?
Yeah, and
complete Netflix, go for a run.
Yeah, I know. So that's it, exactly. But it's incredible, really, to see so many more people choosing that as a route, and I think a lot of them have that and a mental health element to it, or relate. They can all relate to purpose and struggle. I mean, Herman, who talks about, he was in prison when he started running, and like, he's come out of prison and set this up, and within the space of I think in the space of 6 months, or a year, he had like 50,000 followers on Instagram.
Wow.
Like the run club itself. So, and it's called Made. It's all about, what running does for you. So there's like, same with mine, with Run for Your Mind. One of the things I actually regret is never setting up a run club, because I was when I set it up, I was so socially anxious. Like, I never did it, which is so illogical. Like, I could have probably had a decent. So what I did is I have like a group on Strava. It was like virtual, and this was like prior to virtual being sort of the cool thing. This was like, 4,000 people in it, which is really cool. Like, through the Instagram account and stuff as well. But the actual Strava Club's got just short of 4,000 people in it. But yeah, I wish I'd done the in-person one. Really should have done it. It's a shame, really. I could still do it now, but
You can make an annual one, maybe.
yeah, maybe.
I'm not coming in with 100k with you though.
No,
Don't think so. Oly, this has been honestly mega. I've really enjoyed this. Give a shout out to the charities that you're working with, or how people can come and find you.
Yeah, so Run for Your Mind is also a CIC, so it's like a community interest company. So a lot of the stuff that we do in schools is, is through the CIC. We're constantly trying to get sort of funding to fund the wait list we've got. So if anyone ever wants to support that, or if anyone needs any help with the running side of things, please get in touch, and I'd love to help you where I can. And with Lights On, we're just launching the platform over the last sort of month. Just started the onboarding, so we've got like 5 or 6 businesses gone on already, hoping to have 10 by the end of the month. And through that, we're going to be able to, it's effectively bringing the whole team of speakers together and offering something which is accessible and affordable to all businesses of all sizes. And you'll get access to talks all year round, support, and we want to share the stories of the people as well. So the businesses on there. So it's how do we inspire them to then talk about their own struggles, and then there's panel discussions through their workshops and everything. So digitalizing the whole offering really, with bits of e-learning and videos as a little bonus as well. So yeah, get in touch if you need anything, and thanks for today. Appreciate it.
No worries, mate. Thanks for coming. I'll throw all of Oly's socials in the description below, but Oly, this has been brilliant, mate, and I hope the audience has learned something. I know I have. So thank you.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.